I used to feel so devastated. At times I thought we never make it. But now
What is the deal, beautiful people? My name is Ramon. This is Lifestyles Defined. Let's talk about the Samsung Galaxy S8, respectively the S8 Plus. Again, why did you have to use the word plus? There are so many other words you can choose to signify something being much more grandiose than a word Apple uses. God damn it, Samsung. But anyway, this is coming off the heels of a very explosive outcome. I'm sure we're all tired of those jokes, by the way, for the last iteration of this phone where they had some battery issues. And one thing that was interesting there for me was the perception of bubbles. Now, when you speak to anyone who cares about smartphones, Samsung was going out of business. It was bad. You couldn't get on planes with these things because they were blowing up. The batteries were overheating, causing explosions, fires, all types of madness. Samsung was doomed. People for sure thought that this was the end of Android, and this a whole gamut of madness going down the list. When in fact their numbers came out at the end of the year, and that issue with the battery, even though the PR handled it poorly, even though there were rumors that they knew about it, they just didn't listen to the engineer who warned them, all this other stuff, it did not affect their bottom line. So I think by and large, the regular person, even though this was on the news and a lot of this was in front of the regular person, just didn't care. And I thought that was interesting. It always reminded me that bubbles exist. Like to certain people, some things are just the end of the world, and to others, it's like, it's not a big deal. So Samsung survived that, and here they come with a follow-up, and my God, what a hell of a right hook. In fact, this is not even a right hook. This is an uppercut. And you guys know I had my issues with Samsung going back to the S6 Edge Plus, and I'll get into that toward the end of the video. But even so, the issues I have with Samsung, it's really hard to deny how dope of a phone this is, how much of an effort this is, and how well executed it is. So firstly, let's start off with the display. I mean, when you talk about a Galaxy, one of the first things that really comes to mind is always the display. Samsung does a hell of a job on these cameras. I'm sorry, on these displays. And here you get two displays, and they come in a 5.8 inch or a 6.2 inch version, and they're both the Quad HD. So that's the 1440 by 2960. And what's interesting is both those displays have the same exact resolution. I'm not sure how they're managing to work that. And this time around, Samsung's calling the display, it's not so much the edge or the curves, they're calling it the infinity display. And that goes, I guess it's that effect you get when you see like an infinity pool, and it just keeps going. This I can vouch even for using the S6 Edge from back in the day. Not back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, but there is definitely this look of continuum when you look on the side of the screen. It's wild. It's something I would say you have to see in person to really understand it. And it does have HDR support. I believe it's the first phone to have HDR support from whatever these HDR nerds are. There's an organization out there that solidified it to have official HDR. I think it's HDR10 support, whatever. Whoever that matters to. One thing to know about the display is Samsung is shipping it out the box. It defaults to 1080p, and I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps it's to really we'll get into this. It's to really buff up those the last time and really help out the battery a bit, but we'll talk. So yeah, the display of course is going to be gorgeous. You're talking about the design of the screen, or the design of the phone overall. I think this thing is just gorgeous. It's probably the best looking hardware I've seen on a phone in some time. And you get into this conversation where we go, well, how many different iterations of metal and glass can you get? Like, this is the conversation that we have when you're talking about the maturity of a smartphone. Same conversation you have in EOS, right? How much more features can you expect in Android and iOS? Like, these things are mature. You can only move it but so much at a time. And here's where I think Samsung knocked it out of the box. First starting with LG, because LG we saw that roundish screen at the edges, and then here's comes Samsung's, and they add a curve to it. But the overall design of this thing, I think, moves markers in the smartphone world. I just love the way it's designed. I love the way it looks. There's literally all screen on the front, no bezels. The chin at the top and the bottom are very minimalistic. In fact, the home buttons are no longer there, so that the home button, well, the fingerprint reader moves to the back of the phone, and the home button is now a virtual thing. But they also went ahead and did something I thought was very genius. Where the home button is on the bottom, there's a strip, and they added as haptic feedback. So even though you can't see it if you're watching videos, looking at pictures, whatever it is, when you push that area, you still get this feedback to let you know you've activated one of the buttons. And of course, there's the menu and the back button. And what I like about Samsung virtualizing these two buttons is you get to put the button on the right side. For those of you who it was, to me, a jarring effect when I first got my Samsung phone. I hadn't used a Samsung phone in a long time. Samsung almost always puts the back and menu buttons on the opposite side of all the other manufacturers. So that's something that annoyed the hell out of me, because it's a muscle memory thing. It takes a while to get used to. But here, you can go ahead and switch, and that's fine. So that's dope. The actual physical layout of the screen's a lot taller than we're used to seeing. So when you think about it, it's got this 6.2 inch display, and it must be a monster phone. Actually, no, it's a little slimmer and taller. So this helps you with the comfortability of holding the phone, and this is something that's been validated by a lot of people who have been using the LG, the new LG G6. And then here comes Samsung following suit with that same form factor, a little slimmer but taller, and you still get all your screen real estate. So I think that's cool as well. There is a dedicated Bixby button. Bixby is their virtual assistant, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think it's bold that they gave this thing its own his own button. I don't really understand what that's about, especially given the fact that the Google Assistant is still going to be on the phone. I don't know why Samsung's really going down that. Well, whatever. We'll talk about Bixby and come in. You've got your volume rocker. You got the home buttons on the sides. The power buttons. Now on the back, you have, which I thought was an oddly placed fingerprint reader right next to the camera on the camera cluster. I use a Nexus 6P for my main camera, so on my main phone, sorry. So I'm used to having your, at least I can demonstrate right here. I'm used to having where you hold the phone. This is my fingerprint reader, if you see that. That is just a natural place for your finger to land. So the fact that on a taller device, you need to go a little further up to sort of reach the fingerprint scanner could be a problem. And then on top of that, there's also the fact that you might be reaching for the camera, so you'll be smudging the camera a little bit. But I expect with muscle memory over time, something like that disappears. So if you're talking about the new Galaxy, of course you'll be talking about the new specs, and this guy does come with the Snapdragon 835. Now, this is a processor that has eluded some of the recent flagships, because the rumor was Samsung just ate the market up to get these in their new Galaxies, and there are reports of Samsung pretty much doubling the manufacturing of this particular model. So they required a lot of silicone for this 835, and whatever the case is, we haven't seen much benchmarks, but we do know that it is the big boy. It is the chip to beat. And then in other regions outside of the US, I think they get the Exynos version of this processor. So that is what it is. You get the Adreno 540 GPU, 4 gigs of RAM. 4 gigs of RAM, you know what? I thought that was interesting on Samsung's end. I was expecting 6, especially when they are phones that exist today that are literally half the price that do come with 6 gigs. So that's interesting. Both variants will have 64 gigs of storage, expandable, of course. You can get that. You can get your cards in there. And then the battery, the 5.8 inch version comes with a 3000 milliamp battery, and the 6.2 variant comes with a larger 3500 milliamp battery. Those are my concerns of the battery life of these phones. This is one of the main reasons that I was very upset at my S6 Edge Plus. The battery life was piss poor. And it's still, you could still talk about why that was and so many different reasons. But even with the S7s, Samsung still did not address better battery life. And in the Android world, there's been two things happening. So Google's been getting very aggressive with how they allow processes to run in the back in the Android DOS and that kind of stuff. And then there is the manufacturers just throwing wild amounts of battery at it. There's phones out there with 4,000 milliamp batteries, and then it's sort of like, okay, who's right? Are we gonna meet somewhere in the middle and have a happy medium and good battery life? I'm still not quite sure we have arrived at that solution, and I'm not quite sure that with more screen than ever, with a higher resolution, a faster processor ever, that Samsung has figured out this battery life thing. I really don't think the 35 milliamp battery is enough, but I could be wrong, because they've actually been scaling back their user interface quite a bit, so maybe they're attacking it from that angle. I don't know. The camera is pretty much the same you get from the last versions of the Galaxy, so this 12 megapixel camera. I don't think there's much to worry about here, even though, there were rumors that Samsung would have gone with the dual camera setup. And, I've made a few videos pointing out that I don't see a lot of these phones, the iPhones, the Huawei's, I don't see them getting better pictures than the Samsung that existed at that time, and that was the Galaxy 7s. I'm not convinced that a dual camera is needed. And here you are, Samsung doesn't think that way either, and Samsung was leading the industry in camera quality, and I think they will continue to do so. Now, even though they haven't really done much to it, there's some processing things that they did on the chip level or the sensor level, but I don't think the camera's anything to worry about here. They'll probably be best in class again. Features of this guy, this is what I like to talk about, because Samsung's always been the company to throw everything in the kitchen sink in their phones, and I always thought they had a million features that did not matter. And right now, when I look at the feature breakdown, I think Samsung really is doing a good job at offering features that do matter, and there's still a lot of them. So let's go down the list. First is DeX. This is probably my least favorite, but DeX is kind of cool for the Windows Phone fans on the channel, which is almost all of you. DeX is pretty much Continuum. So you get a special dock that they'll sell, and you connect this guy, connects to a mouse, a keyboard, and a monitor, and boom, there's your interface with all of these tiled windows in a desktop-like manner. And it's running Android apps, and they're even working on a Microsoft-specific version that allows you to run the Microsoft apps, which I still kind of don't understand, because are you taking features away from the people who just have the damn Microsoft apps on their phone? I don't get that partnership, but whatever. DeX, it looks cool. It could be interesting to some people, but like Continuum in the Windows Phone world, I think it's a very niche idea, and it's a hell of a tech demo to see how powerful these new phones really are. There's Bluetooth 5, and I haven't seen much improvements to Bluetooth 5. Maybe the range a little bit, the ability to sort of split audio streams to two different directions at once. But other than that, I mean, whatever. The newest Bluetooth is always needed. Sure, why not? It is still waterproof and dust resistant. There's a very interesting picture of some guy sitting in the pool with his legs crossed on his Galaxy 8. So I thought that was dope. I'm loving that it is in here, and Samsung figured out a way to make this a feature going forward. I think, getting my hands on the iPhone 7 and actually being able to watch videos and YouTube videos in the shower, like an old Asian lady. I think not a lot of people understand just how dope that is. It may not be Samsung, but going forward, I think all phones, or my next phone at least, will be waterproof. So I'm happy to see Samsung appeasing to me here. There's the iris scanner, which is something that is less popular these days because it's not as fast as a fingerprint reader, but it is very secure, so you can unlock your phone with the iris scanner. There's a face detection, which I guess is less secure than the iris scanner, but faster. So that in itself is cool, and that I've seen that demonstrated on camera, works really well. And there's a fingerprint reader we discussed that's on the back of the camera. There is that Bixby now. Bixby's Samsung's virtual assistant, but it's much more contextual than any of the other offerings. So for instance, you can tell Bixby to send the last picture you took to a specific contact, and it knows the last picture you took. It knows the person you're talking to or who you're on the phone with. Like, that type of stuff is cool. I don't know. I know Samsung bought, I think it was the folks that did Siri. I think that was who they bought. And it was like, was this worth the effort? Because when you look at this Galaxy, it's coming with... it's got the Google Assistant on there. It's going to have Bixby. And then there's a Microsoft version of the phone that's going to have Cortana. Come on, guys. That's way too much. I get where Samsung's going. Like, why wait for Google to sort of step it up with these features when they can do it themselves? Fine. But I don't think this is the way to do it. It comes off as sloppy to me. But Bixby does have some very dope things to it. It's got like contextual aware with the camera. Like, you can just show it a picture of a watch and it may return perhaps that particular watch, or it'll show you different versions of watches, or you can show it a picture of a flower and says, hey, this is this type of flower, or here's some other type of flowers. Like, whatever, that stuff's pretty cool. I don't have a problem with it. There is, of course, and thank you, Apple, that I need to mention this as a feature. There is a headphone jack, a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack for those of you who are interested. So yeah, I think Samsung did a good job with chalking this guy full of features. But there are some things about it that personally for me make me stay away. One is the speakers. I don't hear... there's some going back and forth as if this guy does have stereo speakers. But nonetheless, I don't expect the speakers to be anything spectacular on the phone because of the waterproofing. And we've seen that with other iterations of waterproof phones and the last version of the Galaxy phone. So there's that. The speakers won't be the best in class. From my last go about with Samsung, I just walked away with a very distasteful taste in my mouth for the Samsung UI, the TouchWiz, whatever they call it these days. Even though they scaled it back even more, and as the versions of these phones come out, they've been scaling it back more and more. I still would like to see Samsung just go straight pure Google, or even if they would do something like the Google edition again, where it's just Google. I think that would be much better. So that in itself, I'm watching out for. And of course, the battery life issue that I mentioned earlier is almost exclusively tied to how heavy Samsung's UI was and how just not well optimized it was. And I know what some people are thinking, we'll just root the phone. This was a problem when I had my S6 Edge Plus. There was no ROM community available because I had the AT&T variant and I couldn't root it. And I love the hardware of that phone, and if I'd have been able to just root it and get a nice, like a pure ROM, a pure Nexus ROM or something on there, I would have been happy. That was not the case, and that's something that I'm very mindful, because if you buy this phone and 2-3 months in you decide you just can't stand TouchWiz, or the battery life just isn't the way it is or supposed to be, or not up to snuff, there's kind of nothing you can do about it. You're just stuck. You can't do what is to me the core of the promise of Android, and that is, if you don't like it, flash a ROM and just get dudes out there who customize heavy towards the things you like to provide you with a better experience. You can't do that, and that bothers me. And then of course there is Samsung with their just, I would say, blatant disrespect for upgrades. You know, that's one of the reasons I ran, not walked, to get a Nexus after my last Samsung phone, is because I would read all about these battery life improvements that the OS is doing, all of these new features, Google Assistant, yada yada yada, and I couldn't get it because Google hands off the package to Samsung then takes 8 months, and then they then hand it to AT&T takes 8 months, and then by the time I get the phone, the update, the new phone was already released. And that to me was so annoying, because I remember watching, I still had the S6 Edge Plus at the time. I remember watching Samsung's keynote on the Galaxy 7, and I still hadn't gotten an update. And they're talking about all these wonderful features, and I didn't even have features from the old OS. I didn't like that shit at all. So I guess, you know, it's, for me, I've got my personal reasons, but I understand there are those of you out there who these things are less of an issue. And I do applaud Samsung. I think they did a really good job here. I think this phone is as complete a package on the Android world as we've ever seen. I like what I see. The design is amazing, and don't get me wrong, I just spoke all that shit about the phone, and I'm still like, damn, I might want to pick this up. The phone's that beautiful. It's that beautiful, and the waterproofing is a big deal. Yo, kudos to Samsung, man. I really am gonna try to get this phone in house so I can put it through its paces, particularly with the battery life and the UI, and see where all of those iterations are. But so far, man, I like what I'm seeing from Samsung, and I think a lot of other people do as well. And I hesitate to say this is exactly what they needed after the last go around, because as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the clusterfuck that was that battery issue didn't really hurt their bottom line. But I guess from a perspective point of view, Samsung needed this home run, and this is exactly what they delivered. But let me know what you guys think. Hit the comment section below. Let's start the conversation. What phone are you currently using? What phone? I want to know what you're using, and if you're thinking about switching to this guy, especially when you expect this to cost anywhere from the $800 to $900 range. Do you think something like what is it? The OnePlus 6T is even showing more of its worth? Will you wait for the next version of OnePlus 6T where you can get all of the goodies that Samsung's trailblazing with, but you can get them now at like a $500 point instead of a $800? Let me know, man. If you liked the video, like it. Subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate the support. And check out all of our other channels in the link in the description down below. My name is Ramon. I'm out of here. Peace. If I had to describe Lifestyles Defined, I would say it is a dream come true to have a platform where we can talk about the things that we love, and we can share with people who also love the things we love the way we love, and just have conversations that matter and go back and forth and grow as a community. It's been a pleasure. It's been a dream, and I just want to thank everyone that's involved for rocking out with us.
From the deep forest into the sun.